I never thought I'd be the one telling this story. My friends used to say I was too cautious, too scared to take risks, and maybe they were right. But that all changed the night. My ex laughed at me. Her laughter cut deeper than any words. It was a quiet evening in my small apartment, the kind of place where you can hear your neighbor's TV through the walls. I was sitting across from Jenna, my ex-girlfriend, in the cramped kitchen. We dated for almost 3 years. 3 years of ups and downs, fights and make-up dinners. But even though we'd broken up 6 months ago, we still had this strange habit of meeting up for drinks every now and then. I guess we were both lonely and stuck in the past. I remember telling her, hesitantly at first, about my plan. How I'd been saving up, how I'd been studying the market, how I wanted to start my own business. My voice was shaky because, let's be honest, I was scared. My entire life had been built around playing it safe, never stepping out of line. But there I was, baring my soul to the one person who used to know me better than anyone. She didn't even wait for me to finish. She threw her head back and laughed, a sharp, cold sound that felt like ice water down my spine. She laughed so hard, tears formed in her eyes. "You starting a business?" She gasped between fits of laughter. "Come on, you can barely decide." "What you want for dinner?" I just sat there, stunned. I felt the blood rush to my face, my ears ringing with the echo of her laughter. It was like she'd taken everything I'd been working toward and crushed it in a single breath. My dream, my ambition gone, like a flickering candle in a storm. I don't know what hurt more, the fact that she didn't believe in me, or the way she looked at me like I was nothing but a joke. In that moment, I saw clearly how she'd never really understood me. Maybe she never had. I tried to smile, to brush it off, but the words were stuck in my throat. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the air heavy. My hands were shaking, and I felt this cold knot of anger forming in my chest. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her she was wrong, that she didn't know me at all. But instead, I just nodded and took a sip of my drink. My mouth tasted like metal, bitter and sharp. After she left that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, her laughter replaying in my head like a broken record. That night, something in me shifted. I decided I wouldn't let her laughter be the final word. She didn't know, me not really. And I was going to prove it to her, to myself, to everyone. Even if it killed me, the days after that night with Jenna were a blur. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Every word, every smirk. It was like I was trapped in that moment, stuck in the echo of her laughter. I'd never felt so humiliated in my life. But I couldn't let it end there. I decided to throw myself into my dream, my business idea, like it was the only thing that mattered. Because maybe it was. At first, it felt like I was chasing shadows. I spent hours in front of my laptop, researching, planning, trying to build something out of nothing. I was working a dead-end job at the time, just enough to pay rent and keep the lights on. So every spare moment was poured into this business. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I was driven by this raw, burning need to prove Jenna wrong. But every time I thought I was making progress, her voice would come back to me, taunting, laughing. It was like she was right there, leaning over my shoulder, whispering, "You'll never make it." Some nights I'd just sit there, staring at the spreadsheet on my screen. My fists clenched so tight my knuckles ached. I kept telling myself it didn't matter what she thought. But in the quiet hours of the night, I knew it did. It mattered because I needed to believe in myself, and I wasn't sure I did yet around that time. I started to notice strange little things. Nothing big at first, just odd moments that didn't feel right. I'd hear my phone buzz late at night. There'd be these cryptic messages from an unknown number. "Don't waste your time, or you're going to fail." At first, I thought it was just a scammer or a wrong number, but the messages were too personal. They felt targeted, like someone knew exactly where to hit me. I tried to brush it off, but my gut told me something was off. I changed my number. But the messages kept coming, this time on social media. Fake accounts, dim as that vanished after I read them, always the same mocking tone. Like someone was trying to wear me down before I'd even begun. It felt like Jenna's laughter had become a ghost that followed me everywhere. One night, I was working late in my tiny living room, A stack of market research reports spread across the coffee table. My phone lit up with another anonymous message. You're not cut out for this. Give up now. My chest tightened. I looked around the empty room, half expecting to see Jenna standing there, smirking in the shadows. I couldn't prove it was her, but the words "her" words echoed in every message. It was like she was everywhere, always one step ahead, ready to remind me how small and worthless I was. I didn't want to believe she could be that cruel, but the doubt was always there, eating away at me. I'd lie awake at night, wondering if she was behind it all. I'd think about how she'd laughed in my face, how she'd looked at me like I was a child playing at being an adult. And I'd wonder if she'd decided to take it further too. Make sure I never even got the chance to prove her wrong. But doubt cuts both ways. Some days I wondered if I was just imagining it. Maybe I was so desperate to prove her wrong that I was seeing threats where there were none. My friends noticed I was on edge, snapping at them over nothing, drifting through conversations, like a ghost. Are you okay? My friend Mark asked one night when we were grabbing drinks. He looked at me with this worried expression, like he could see straight through me. Yeah, I lied, forcing a smile. Just tired. Been working a lot. He didn't push me, but I could feel his eyes on me all night. And in those moments, I felt even more alone, because I couldn't tell anyone what I was going through. How do you explain that? Your exes? Laughter was still haunting you? That you were getting messages that sounded like her voice, even if you had no proof? The fear became a constant hum in my chest. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd flinch. Every shadow in my apartment felt like it was watching me. But no matter how hard it got, I kept working. I poured everything I had into my business plan. Every ounce of doubt and fear turned into fuel, because I had to believe that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining it all, and that one day I'd have the chance to look Jenna in the eye and show her just how wrong she'd been. It was about 3 months into the grind when everything came to a head. I was exhausted physically and emotionally, but I'd reached a point where I refused to let Jenna's laughter be the last word. I had to find out who was behind the harassment to prove to myself that I wasn't just imagining it. It really was her. I needed to see it in black and white. One night, after another round of those mocking messages, I sat down at my desk and decided to dig deeper. I started small, going through old conversations, scanning her social media accounts. She'd always been careful, but I knew her habits. Jenna was the kind of person who couldn't resist showing off when she thought she was being clever at first. There was nothing, just the usual photos of brunches with friends, fake smiles, and captions about living her best life. But then, buried in the comments of an old post, I found it. A single line that made my blood run cold. Guess some people just can't take a hint. She'd written in response to a friend's comment about toxic relationships. The date lined up perfectly with the first night I got one of those anonymous messages. My hands shook as I read it over and over, the words searing into my brain. It wasn't proof, not exactly, but it was enough to make me dig deeper. I reached out to a friend who worked in IT security, a guy named Alex who owed me a favor from years back. I told him I needed help tracing some anonymous accounts and messages, but I kept it vague. The less he knew, the better. He worked fast. Within a couple of days, he sent me a file with IP addresses linked to those fake accounts. My heart pounded as I read through them. One of them, one that had sent me the most vicious messages, was traced back to Jenna's apartment. Building, I sat there, staring at the screen, the words swimming in front of me. I felt sick, like the floor had dropped out from under me. I'd suspected it all along, but seeing it in black and white was like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just paranoia, it was real. I didn't know what to do with that information at first. My hands were clammy, my mind spinning. Part of me wanted to confront her right away, to shove the evidence in her face and watch her squirm. But another part of me, the part that had grown sharper, harder, these past months, knew that wasn't enough. I needed more. She was willing to go this far to break me. I had to be ready to fight back. And not just with words. I spent the next few weeks gathering everything I could. I kept records of the messages, screenshots, times, and dates. Recorded phone calls when those blocked numbers tried to reach me. It felt like I was building a case, one piece at a time. I started reaching out to people who had once been close to Gino, old friends we'd both known. People she'd cut off or drifted away from. I didn't tell them everything, but I asked questions, listened closely. And bit by bit, a clearer picture began to emerge. Turns out, Jenna had always had a cruel streak, little lies she'd told about people. Small betrayals that didn't seem like much on their own. But when I put them all together, it was like seeing her true face for the first time. The girl who'd once shared my dreams, who'd whispered promises in the dark, had become someone who would rather destroy me than see me succeed. The more I learned, the more determined I became. This wasn't just about proving her wrong anymore. It was about reclaiming my life from the shadows she'd cast over it. I realized I'd been living in fear of her laughter, of her judgment. Something she couldn't deny. One night, sitting alone in my apartment with the evidence spread out in front of me, I felt a strange kind of calm settle over me. My heart was still racing, but it was different now, more focused. I was no longer just a victim, I was taking control. I knew I couldn't confront her publicly yet. That would only give her a chance to spin it, to play the victim like she always did. I needed to be smart, strategic, so I kept quiet, biding my time, gathering more proof. Every day I worked on my business by day and my case against her by night. I was fueled by this mix of anger and purpose, and it made me sharper than I'd ever been. And in the middle of all that chaos, something unexpected happened. I started to believe in myself again, not because I wanted to prove her wrong, but because I was finally seeing who I really was, a fighter. Someone who could take the pain and turn it into something powerful. The betrayal still stung, but it no longer defined me. I could feel it in my bones. This was just the beginning. When the time came to confront her, I'd be ready. Ready to show her that her laughter had only made me stronger. The day of the confrontation started like any other gray sky. Cold coffee, the usual anxiety humming in my chest, but beneath it all was a steady, determined calm. I'd spent weeks gathering everything I needed. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, and now it was real. I had arranged to meet Jenna at a small cafe near her apartment, a place we used to go together when things were still good. I chose it deliberately familiar enough to make her feel safe, but public enough that she couldn't twist the narrative in private. As I sat there waiting for her to arrive, I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. My phone buzzed with a message from her on my way. "What's this about?" I didn't answer. She arrived a few minutes later, her smile as bright and fake as ever. She slid into the chair across from me, her eyes flicking over me with that same old mix of amusement and condescension. "So," she said, leaning back and crossing her arms, "what's the big emergency?" I took a slow breath, willing my voice to stay steady. "I know what you've been doing, Jenna. The messages, the fake accounts. I have proof." Split second, her mask slipped, her eyes widened, just a flicker, but I saw it. Then she laughed, short and sharp. "What the hell are you talking about? Are you seriously still obsessed with this? God, you're pathetic." I slid a folder across the table. Inside were the screenshots, the IP address matches, the recordings, everything. Her fingers hesitated before she touched it, and I saw her swallow hard. The color drained from her face as she flipped through the pages. Each one a nail in the coffin of her lies. "You're lying," she said, her voice tight, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "This doesn't prove anything." "Proves enough," I said, my voice low and cold. "And if you think I'm going to let you keep playing games, you're wrong." She shoved the folder back at me, her hand shaking. "You don't scare me," she hissed. But her words sounded hollow, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. I leaned in closer, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not trying to scare you, Jenna. I'm done with that. But you're going to stop right now. I'll make sure everyone sees exactly who you are." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I've already started some of those old friends of yours. They know, and they're not on your side anymore." Her jaw tightened, and I saw the fight leave her eyes, replaced by something else panic. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She'd underestimated me for so long. She'd forgotten I could fight back. For a long moment, we just sat there in silence. Around us, the cafe buzzed with quiet conversations and the clink of coffee cups. But in that moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. She looked away first, her shoulders slumping. "You don't understand," she said finally, her voice soft and raw. "I never meant for it to get this far. I didn't want to see you succeed without me." The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something pity, maybe, but it didn't last. "That's not an excuse," I said. "You tried to destroy me because you were scared, but I'm not scared anymore." She didn't answer. Her eyes were wet, but I didn't care. I stood up, gathering the folder and my phone. "We're done here," I said. "I don't need your approval. I don't need your permission. I sure as hell don't need your laughter." I turned and walked out of the cafe, my legs shaky, but my heart steady. Outside, the sky had cleared, the sun breaking through the clouds in golden shards of light. I felt like I was seeing the world in color for the first time in months. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I knew that this was the end of her hold over Mitha, end of letting her voice define who I was. As I walked down the street, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from one of the friends I'd confided in. "You did the right thing. She can't hurt you anymore." I smiled, a real smile this time, as I knew it was true. That night I went home and poured myself a drink, a small celebration, just for me. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my reflection. Really looked. I saw someone who had been beaten down, doubted, but who refused to stay that way. Someone who had faced down the person who tried to break him and walked away stronger. It wasn't the end of my story. I still had a business to build, a life to create from the ashes of her betrayal. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't doing it to prove her wrong. I was doing it to prove to myself that I was enough, that I had always been enough. And as I took that first sip, I felt a peace I hadn't known in months, because her laughter didn't matter anymore. It never did. In the days that followed, word started to spread. Some of those old friends, people who'd known Jenna long before I came into the picture, began to see her for who she really was. Evidence I'd shared was impossible to ignore, and once the whispers started, there was no stopping them. It was strange how quickly the tide turned. The girl who once held so much power over me was suddenly exposed, her lies unraveling one by one. She tried to deny it at first, of course tried to play the victim, to spin it all as some kind of misunderstanding. But the truth had a way of clinging to her, no matter how hard she tried to wash it off. I heard from mutual friends that she was losing the connection she'd worked so hard to cultivate. Invitations stopped coming. Messages went unanswered. She wasn't the center of their world anymore, and I knew it had to be eating her up inside. Part of me thought I should feel sorry for her. I didn't. She'd made her choice the night she decided to tear me down. As for me, the fear and self-doubt that had shadowed my every move began to fade. Slowly but surely, I felt the weight lift from my chest. I wasn't looking over my shoulder every time my phone buzzed. I wasn't second-guessing every word, every decision. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was breathing freely. But it wasn't all clean and simple. Some nights I'd still lie awake thinking about how far she'd gone just to see me fail. I'd remember the sound of her laughter, that icy echo that had once haunted my dreams. It didn't sting like it used to, but it was there, like a scar you can't quite forget. I think part of me will always carry that scar. Because when someone you once trusted shows you just how deep their betrayal can go, it changes you. It makes you see the world differently, makes you a little harder, a little wiser. But it also shows you your own strength, the kind you don't. No, you have until you're tested. In the end, I didn't need to destroy her. She did that herself. And as I watched her carefully constructed world crumble, I realized something important. I didn't need her to believe in me. I didn't even need her to understand. All I needed was the quiet certainty in my own heart that I'd survived, that I'd risen from the ashes of her betrayal, stronger than I'd ever been. In the weeks that followed, I started to rebuild my life piece by piece, without the weight of Jenna's shadow hanging over me. Everything felt sharper, clearer. I poured myself into my business idea with a new sense of purpose, no longer driven by the need to prove something to her, but by a genuine belief in myself. I rented a small workspace, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I spent long hours there, scribbling out plans, making calls, meeting with potential partners. And with every decision I made, I felt more in control, more like the person I'd always wanted to be. The doubt that had once eaten at me was still there in flickers, but it no longer defined me. People started to notice. My friends who'd watched me struggle for so long began to see the change in me. They said I seemed lighter, more confident. They were right, I was. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to rely on my own strength. I was no longer waiting for someone else to tell me I was good enough. I also learned to let go of the need for Jenna's validation. That was the biggest shift of all. I used to think her approval was the only thing that mattered, that if she believed in me, it meant I was worth something. But now I saw it differently. My worth didn't depend on anyone else's laughter or scorn. It was something I carried inside me, and no one could take that away. The messages stopped. The silence that followed was almost eerie at first, but then it became comforting. It was like the end of a storm, the sun breaking through after weeks of gray. And in that quiet, I found space to breathe again. I started to let people in, to open up about what had happened, not out of a need for sympathy, but to show that I wasn't ashamed. I wanted them to see that it's possible to come back from betrayal, to find strength in the places where you were once broken. And I found new dreams, too. My business wasn't just a plan on paper anymore, it was real. I signed my first contract, watched the first dollars come in, and felt the pride bloom in my chest like a second heartbeat. Each small victory was a reminder that I'd chosen this path for myself and that I was capable of walking it. Jenna faded into the background of my life. A chapter I'd closed, but would never forget. Her laughter no longer had power over me. It was just a memory, a warning of how easy it is to let someone else's voice drown out your own. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. Healing never is, but it was worth it. Because through it all, I found something more valuable than any business deal or plan. I found myself, person I was meant to be, hidden beneath all the fear and doubt. Now when I look in the mirror, I see someone who survived, someone who turned heartbreak into fuel and betrayal into a blueprint for resilience. Someone who knows that no matter how hard someone tries to tear you down, the only voice that truly matters is the one inside you, the one that says you can, and you will. That's the voice I listen to now, and it's never led me wrong. In the end, this wasn't just a story about betrayal or about proving someone wrong. It was about learning that the only validation that truly matters is the one you give yourself. Because people will doubt you, they'll laugh, try to tear you down when your dreams don't fit into the box they've built for you. But you can't let their voices be louder than your own. I learned that real strength isn't about never being knocked down. It's about getting back up, no matter how many times you fall. It's about finding the courage to stand tall in the face of laughter and scorn and saying, I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. I learned that betrayal doesn't have to define you, that the scars someone leaves on your soul can become reminders of how far you've come. They don't disappear, but they lose their power when you stop letting them dictate who you are. I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't about exposing someone else, it's about living so fully, so fearlessly, that their attempts to break you end up meaning nothing at all. Because when you build your life around your own values, your own dreams, no one else's bitterness can touch you. So if you're standing where I once stood, doubting yourself, haunted by someone else's laughter, I want you to know this. Your dreams are yours. They're not meant to be understood or approved by everyone. They're meant to be chased by you. For you, and if you're willing to keep going, if you're willing to keep believing, even when it feels like the whole world wants you to give up, you'll find that every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. Every breath you take in defiance of doubt is a testament to your own quiet power. That's what I carry with me now and deep. Unshakable, knowing that I am enough, and that no matter what shadows come to test me, I'll keep walking in the light of my own truth. Because in the end, the greatest triumph is not proving them wrong, it's proving to yourself that you never needed their approval in the first place.